Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Outer Rim. We are here today to discuss the third episode in season 2 of The Mandalorian. This one is titled The Heiress.
Oh, my God. I'm so excited. I can't wait to... Oh, did I go too soon?
You went too soon, Lou. I didn't even introduce you yet.
I'm sorry.
Just for that, you gotta wait to... You gotta get to the end of the line. I know.
Damn it.
I know. I'm Eric. And I'm not Lou.
Hi, Eric.
Hi, Tim. How are you doing today?
I am doing very well. I'm excited, but I can, unlike other hosts on this show, I can actually contain my excitement.
Self-restraint.
Wow, self-restraint. Yes, that seems like that would be an important trait to have, right?
It probably would be.
Tom, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I also have self-restraint. Lou's over here like, one of these giddy bounty hunters that just runs in and gets smoked.
Yeah.
I'm gonna size the situation up and then...
I'm gonna self-destruct.
Yeah. All right, Lou, you think you can behave?
I will behave.
Okay.
Deep breath, Lou.
How are you doing, Lou?
Center yourself.
I'm doing great. I am doing great for this early Saturday morning.
And I tell you what, we've only been streaming for like, a minute, maybe. And we've got Tom and Lila and Corin in the chat room. Good morning, everybody. I know it's a Saturday morning. It's early. Nobody should be awake on a day off at this early hour. But
it's allowed for this.
Yeah, I mean, it's allowed. We're not going to say you can't be here. We're just honored that you would get up and spend your Saturday morning with us. And for everybody else listening later on, thank you for being here. If you're listening to the audio podcast, don't forget you can go to YouTube now. RandomChatter.com/YouTube. Hit the subscribe button down below. If you like the episode, hit the thumbs up button. If you don't, blame Lou. He has no self-restraint. You couldn't believe the lack of self-restraint. I know, right? All right. Well, let's jump into this episode. This one was directed by Bryce Dallas Howard, right? And
yeah, we were totally wrong about the whole director thing.
Were we?
Where we thought that Filoni directed like one or two and the rest were done by Favreau.
I never said that. Oh, Tom said
writing.
That. I think it could be the writing.
Tom, I expect better.
Wow, everybody's just on everybody's case today.
Wow, guys, it was a fun episode. Let's enjoy the moment.
Now, you have to. You talked out of turn again, Lou. Yeah.
Oh God.
I'll take my 10 to.
All right. So much to unpack in this episode. As much as last episode, some people complained about it being a filler episode. And we talked last episode of Outer Rim how we didn't feel like it was a filler episode. It was just encapsulated, but it didn't really contribute to the overall story. Not that it needed to, or if it did so in very subtle ways that maybe we'll discover later on or something. But this episode undeniably contributed to the overall story arc, and in a pretty big way, I think. So first, around the room here, Tim, what did you think of this episode in general compared to the rest of the season, the rest of the series?
I think it was one of the strongest episodes of the entire series. It was fantastic. It had terrific action. It had really good comedic moments. It furthered the story. It brought us to a new world, a new environment. We had so many connections with different storylines. We had a lot of really good intersections. We had obviously new characters, or at least characters that are new to this particular series, come in. It just had this great amalgamation of everything, and it was incredibly well done.
I agree. Really happy. Tom, what do you think?
This was like the moment in Solo where they inject the hyperfuel into the coaxium into the hyperdrive of.
In other words, it made no sense at all and was completely confusing. Is that?
Well, from a technical standpoint, maybe, but from a story standpoint, anybody that complained about the pacing, I think, had their concerns answered with this story. And the best thing about all of it was seeing the real positive feedback that was making its way to Bryce Dallas Howard. She was interacting with folks online, and it was clear that it made a good impact to her.
Good.
Yeah.
All right, Lou, you have to hold on a minute. My thoughts We're
Wow, I knew that was coming. I could feel it.
feel it in the force. Tim, I agree with you. I think this is one of the better episodes of the series so far. I liked, again, the humor was spot on. The writing was good. The action was good. The pacing was good. We got major story development. I loved it. But Lou, what did you think?
Well, I mean, you guys actually already said everything, but no, I mean, I think it's one of the strongest episodes
next topic?
of the series so far. My favorite so far. I mean, we had action. It ticked all the boxes, right? I mean, it had action. It had comedy. We had the child that wasn't overtaking everything. We had new characters that didn't stop the story. It actually enhanced the story and moved it along. Everything about this was just fantastic.
So we are definitely going to hit spoilers in this episode, and there are a couple of major ones. So if you, for some reason, are watching this without having actually seen the episode yet, and I know for a fact there's one person in the chat room who I'm going to convince to watch the series who hasn't yet. Of course, she probably also won't get the references to any of the spoilers anyway, so it's probably okay. So, Luke who? Yeah. So let's just jump right in. We're not necessarily going to go in chronological order throughout the episode, but I have to say the opening, the landing on the platform, of all the comedic moments, to me, this ranks right up there with the speeder bike troopers in the finale from last season. That was just an epic landing. I loved that.
Somebody on Twitter made the really great observation that the shot of the Razor Crest entering the atmosphere was a direct callback to Ron Howard's movie Apollo 13 and the reentry of the capsule there. And they had a dual screen comparison of the shots. And they were like, I love Apollo 13. These look very similar. And Bryce Dallas Howard commented that it was absolutely intended that way. So
that's cool.
Very nice.
Yeah.
But
that's so cool.
So Tim and I watched this together yesterday morning.
Did you? How did that work out from a technical point?
I think from a technical point, I think it was, I had two different accounts kind of going. It was weird. I upgraded my Apple ID is different story, but it worked fine once we got both on there together. It was awesome. We had a call going on our cell phone, so we were chatting as we were doing the view, but it was great.
Yeah.
And I had a comment about that. Was this the first time we actually saw a ship make a fiery reentry in Star Wars?
No,
you had the massive wreckage from in Revenge of the Sith, where they bring
the Chancellor ship, right?
Yeah, Grievous's ship.
Right. Yeah. But otherwise, I mean, we haven't seen ships making a traditional reentry like we're used to seeing our spacecraft make a reentry, where they need heat shielding and come through the atmosphere, and that's all about slowing down, right? So I was just curious if all ships do that, or they work some other magic where they're not doing.
Yeah, it's called editing.
But it was cool to see that.
They're approaching the planet, and then all of a sudden there's a cut, and they're in the atmosphere.
You're there.
That's the magic.
Right.
Don't worry about
that. That was awesome. I love the interaction between him and the port controller, and hey, dude, you got to slow down. You're coming in a little hot.
but also going into that, Din had mentioned, he told Frog Lady, he's like, my systems are fried, and this is not going to go well. Yeah. So so part of it was definitely part of the automated landing system, which controls and moderates all that stuff, and so they just simply didn't have control.
I would just say that seeing the Razor Crest in like a constant state of disrepair is something that I absolutely love about the show. As a kid watching the original trilogy and seeing a scene like the Falcon fail to start on Echo Base, like I love those moments, and it's refreshing to see like this strong character who knows a lot and is great at fighting, but he can't quite always keep his ship completely intact, and that's sort of an ongoing struggle. And the Razor Crest has become like a character in and of itself, and I really
I'm hearing from some people,
and it's a Star Wars trope,
are a little annoyed by it and kind of want, like, I mean, even Lou, you had pointed out, listen, this thing shouldn't even be flight worthy at this point. Let's scrap it and get something else. I agree with what you're saying, Tom, but there are a lot of people who are kind of like, let's move on. And I don't get it. I love the Razor Crest.
It just needs an over. I do too. It needs an
yeah.
overhaul. It needs some serious
just like
work.
the Mandalorian's armor. Let's give it a 2.0, right?
Exactly, yeah. I mean, if he gets pulled over, there's no way the cop's going to let him back on the road. I mean, it's like,
well, I mean, if he's flying through West Virginia,
your stabilizers aren't going.
I think the cops here might, yeah.
And we'll get this at the end of this episode when we talk about what happens at the end. But I mean, this ship needs a dry dock.
Yeah, it needs some help. All right, so
it needs something more than some Moncal dock worker who takes 1,000 credits for wrapping it in twine and maybe putting fuel in it. I guess don't really know.
Yeah. Well,
His sweater was the highlight of the episode. The cable knit fisherman sweater. Great. That deserves an Emmy for costume.
So that's interesting. So we're on a different planet. And I have to say that we've had our expectations from the trailer disrupted a little bit. We're going to come back to this, but we thought maybe this would be Moncal or some other. Some people suspected Camino, but I don't think a lot of us really thought about that. But this is yet again another time when we see a planet and it's not where we thought it was going to be. This is a planet called Trask, which we've never seen before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're not sure if that's the planet or the port, but yeah, because I had that question in my mind too. So we're going to Trask, and it was Trask Port, but
I'll have to look at that again on a rewatch. I thought there was a point later on where the character he meets up, we're doing spoilers, I guess I can just say it, where Bo-Katan mentions Trask. So Trask was mentioned earlier in the episode and then about midway through the episode by Bo-Katan, and I thought she had referred to it as a planet, but I could be wrong.
I don't know. Yeah.
If we're using Star Wars naming conventions, it would make complete sense that place is called like Port City or Trask Port or something like that. That's like really, really creative.
Like, New York City being in New York,
City,
like things like that. Yeah. So Tom Nelson in the chat room said, completely random factoid. The actress who voiced Iden Versio apparently helped puppeteer one of the Moncal characters. Which is pretty cool.
That's right. Jaina Gavankar. Yeah.
I always mess up the last name.
She made the comment on Twitter. She was like, look, I will do anything. I'll operate some eyeballs if you need something to blink. Whatever you need.
That's cool. All right. So we've got Quarren. We've got Mon Calamari. I've got a question about this. So obviously we've got yet another situation where Din Djarin's trying to find other Mandalorians. He goes to see a contact. He offers them money for information. It's a trap. They're trying to get his Beskar armor.
He gets to spend his flan. I thought that was awesome, where he decides to whip out the Mon Cala currency and pay for it there.
Yeah, that was cool. The Quarren, Tom, you might be able to answer this. I've kind of had the impression for a while that Quarren are not looked upon fondly as a species in the Star Wars universe. Is that my perception, or is that kind of a thing?
No, that's accurate. That's accurate. They briefly share a planet, a home planet on Mon Cal with the Mon Calamari. The Mon Calamari obviously are doing a few more things in the galaxy and whatnot, and they're the Quarren are sort of this belligerent race that is constantly trying to pick fights and whatnot. And I think to some extent probably feel like they live in the Mon Calamari's shadow. So it's good to see them like consistently played as a bunch of a-holes.
And that's exactly my point. Like I think I texted that to both of you guys yesterday morning.
Yeah.
Why are like we saw the one Quarren dude in the bar restaurant place there when Din first comes in, and it's like, oh, you think the guy's being really nice and helpful, and nope, screws him right over.
Yeah,
screws him right over in the next scene. Thanks a lot,
Quarren.
You're
both being kind of racist there, though. I mean, maybe they're not all that way.
So far they're
Well, what's funny is when I watched it the second time through, as I do with subtitles on, I caught something that I didn't catch the first time around, which is he's effectively getting double crossed without even realizing it. So he pays the bartender for some information. He walks over, and when you have subtitles on, you can hear that the bartender kind of whispers to the Quarren, like, yeah, he's got Beskar on, or he's wearing Beskar.
Yeah.
So he knows what's up.
Yeah.
Yep.
And is selling them out anyways.
And I keep waiting for when he asks someone, he says, "Have you seen the Mandalorian? Just someone that looks like me." I wait for someone to say, "Well, take your helmet off and see what you look like," because
Yeah, or somebody saying a droid. Yeah, we have those here.
Right.
A stormtrooper,
So,
just a shiny one.
the introduction of the Mandalorians. The whole the trap thing that they set for the child and for Din Djarin, I thought was kind of cool. And you don't really see him underwater very often. You have to imagine that armor's probably somewhat heavy. I mean, he walks around with it all day, so it can't be that bad. But I have to imagine underwater, he's probably not going to float very well. So
You saw him firing the jetpack to stay above
Yeah.
water. That's the only way you see it fire, and he's got it on while he's gripping
Yeah.
the grate.
Can I just remark though, all those Mon Cal and not one of them could have told Din that it was a trap. Not one of them.
They're in on it. You think they're not going to get a
he
cut
was
of that
busy
Beskar
fixing
sale?
the ship, Tim.
Such crap. Such crap.
That's what
So
he
many of
said.
them
He
are.
said it's a crap when he looked at the ship. Okay.
But it was pretty easy to tell when we went on the ship. I'm like, okay, this is not going to go well for him. I mean, it was. I had the feeling right away. I'm like, yeah, he's gonna. But I thought maybe he was gonna get thrown in the pit, not the child. But
Let the kid go closer.
All right. So
That was one of those pucker moments when you see the pram just shut right as the creature swallows it.
Yeah.
Like innately, like they're not going to kill Baby Yoda like this, but I kind of sat forward in my seat and I was like, oh no.
yeah, well, I watched it for the third time with my wife last night. She's like, oh,
yeah, the timing and
She would
the
rather
editing of
see.
that shot was really good.
Tom's paternal instincts kicked in.
yeah.
So we've got the introduction of the Mandalorians, and this is another one of our expectations that was kind of blown out of the water. The planet last episode that we thought maybe it was Ilum was not. This planet was not the planet we thought. Sasha Banks, a lot of people thought maybe she was playing Sabine. There was some speculation that she played what would be the canonical version of Boba Fett's daughter, a character that played somewhat heavily in late Legends novels. That was not the case. And then also the scene from the trailer that takes place on a Star Destroyer, not a Star Destroyer. It's been interesting to me how, looking back at the trailer, there's a lot of stuff that we got wrong because we couldn't remove it from stuff that we already knew. And it's almost like they're just kind of
But
laughing
it's
in
also
our
hard
face.
to guess something.
That's
that you
very
don't
true.
know.
And if you go through the whole trailer saying, nah, I'm sure it's all stuff we don't know yet, then it kind of takes the fun out of speculating. So,
True.
But we do get to see the new Mandalorians. We've got Bo-Katan, played by Katie Sackhoff. If you are not familiar with the character, I'm going to have Tom give you guys a quick primer here in just a moment, because his character featured heavily in the Clone Wars, also voiced by Katie Sackhoff. So it was cool that they got her back, right? Mm-hmm. And she looked just like the character. So that was awesome.
Yeah.
And then we've got two other Mandalorians, one played by Sasha Banks, Casca Reeves, and the other one played by Simon Cassianides, I hope.
Sure.
And the
right.
character's name is Axe
why not?
Woves. And then while we're on casting, the Imperial officer at the end, I saw him and I'm like, is that Titus Welliver from Lost and a bunch of other stuff that's not Lost, but from Lost? That's awesome.
Yeah, I knew it was familiar. I had to Google him, but I'm like, oh yeah, I know the face.
Such
Yeah,
a
he was
good
good.
choice for an Imperial officer casting. And he didn't have a name. He's just credited as Imperial officer. But in fact, so credits, Sasha Banks was not in the credits unless maybe that's like her stage name from wrestling and her real name was one of the names in the credits.
Well, so I just looked her up. Her real name, and it's a mouthful, is Mercedes Justine Casener Bernardo.
Well, if she was in the credits, they shortened
Sasha
it.
Banks is her stage name.
Because there were many people in the credits because they did it in order of appearance, and there was nobody with four names in the credits. But yeah, so I'll look that up now. But she was not credited as Sasha Banks.
Right. No, she posted a picture on Twitter that was her pointing to her name in the credits, and I think it was a shortened version of her real name.
All right. As long as she was credited, I'm like, well, that's kind of a crappy thing to do to, insert her in the trailer and not even in the
sat there and
credits.
She risked her life for the child. You can't put her in the credits.
So what did you guys think of the Mandalorians getting to see others in real life? Well, let's hold that. Actually, Tom, tell us about this group of Mandalorians. Tell us about Mandalore, about Bo-Katan, and about the different kind of factions of Mandalorians that we know of already, including the Night Watch, because now we have, the Children of the Watch is how Din Djarin was described. Like, tell us a little bit about what we need to know about Mandalore and Mandalorians coming into this.
What you need to do is stop listening to us and go immediately watch the Clone Wars and Rebels, and then come back and thank me later.
You should pause us.
We first met Bo-Katan back during the Clone Wars series. She was part of she wasn't a member of House Kryze, or excuse me, not House Kryze, House Vizsla, and by that I mean pre-Vizsla, the leader of the Death Watch, which is this real militant sect of the Mandalorian society that was trying to bring it back to its old warlike ways. But she is in camp with them. She's got a group of Mandalorians that she leads called the Night Owls, and they are in league during the latter part of the Clone Wars, trying to effectively overthrow the peaceful government of Mandalore and get things back to the old warlike ways. That's where she first meets Ahsoka. They have a combative relationship because Ahsoka and a comrade help blow up and destroy the Death Watch camp. Eventually, in the most recent season of the Clone Wars, Bo-Katan splits with, before the last season, Bo-Katan splits with the Death Watch as Darth Maul takes over the organization and subverts it to his will as part of the Shadow Collective and his efforts to just put a stick in Palpatine's spokes. So she breaks off. She's no longer a member of that crew. And then as the Republic arrives to assist in breaking Mandalore free and of Maul's grip, she goes all in with Ahsoka, and they work together to try to capture Maul. And her goal really is to free Mandalore and get things back to the way that they were, where the planet's not under the boot heel. Fast forward into the Rebels series, and she's featured fairly heavily again. Sabine Wren, who's featured prominently in the series, acquires the Darksaber at some point in the series, and eventually ends up handing it over to Bo-Katan. The two are unified in their effort, again, to restore Mandalorian society. At that point in time, they're now under the boot heel of the Empire. And one of the last bits that you see of Bo-Katan in that series, and again, that series happens like right before the events of A New Hope. She's handed the Darksaber, and Bo-Katan is sort of able to help use it to unify the remaining tribes of Mandalore, these different disparate houses, with one goal in mind. So that's the last you see of her in that series. It's clear that she fought in the Great Purge that we've heard referenced in this show, and that at some point she became separated, probably forcefully, from the Darksaber, and it's now in the hands of Moff
And once
Gideon.
again, the Darksaber, for those who don't know, this was a lightsaber forged by a Mandalorian like a long time ago who became a Jedi. And then there was some drama about it afterwards and such. But for ages, generations, it had been kind of seen as almost like in the same way a king may have a scepter that's passed down from king to king to king. This is kind of the scepter, the ruling iconography of Mandalore. So, so that's obviously reason she wants to get it back. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly.
So I had another question about Bo-Katan, but I don't remember what it was. Yeah, Tim, go ahead.
So just to go back to the Sasha Banks item, she's credited in The Mandalorian as Mercedes Vernado, which is, yes, a shortened version of her name. And while also kind of going through the IMDb cast listing for this episode, came to realize that the same actor who physically plays Queel is the one who plays Frog Lady, and that is Misty Rosas.
Cool.
Yeah. Very nice.
I'm glad to see them do that. Take, actors who don't get an opportunity to really be prominent outside of whatever prosthetics they're wearing or masks or whatever, and continue to have them active in the series. I like that. Yeah. So what did you guys think of The Mandalorians?
Oh, I was pretty stoked. When Lou and I were doing our watch together thing, one of the things that I realized, and I mentioned to him that I love, was the fact that, like, we see Din usually alone in fighting, and we realize that, like, okay, he has his certain fighting style, which very oftentimes ends up him getting his butt handed to him. These three are like a well-oiled machine,
right?
The way that they fight, and all their stuff is complementary. Like, one person will get someone with the shooty out rope thingy, lasso thingy, and and then another one will, like, knife them while the person's down or something, and it's just like this really well choreographed.
It reminded me of all the things I saw them try to do in Clone Wars, but always felt a little bit cartoony. And yet here they pulled it off in live action so smoothly that it was very believable. It had almost kind of a John Wick feel to it, though it was obviously in a very different context, but it was a group of people having that symmetry and synergy. And it was very cool. I loved the choreography and each one of the action scenes they were in. I thought just they nailed it. It was really good. And I loved the way they brought the costumes to life too. The artwork on the helmets. This group seems to have more like paint on the helmets in more of an artistic way, as opposed to just the metal helmets that we see in the Watch. And so from this, we can assume, maybe Tom, you can correct me on this, that the children of the Watch, that's probably the descendants of what was the Night Watch, this other group that, and we've actually got a Vizsla in the covert in season 1 too. The heavy Mandalorian, the one that was voiced by Jon Favreau, that character is a Vizsla.
Yeah,
you're crossing streams with Game of Thrones with the Night Watch.
Okay, whatever. Sorry. I've had a long shift at work before. I know this is the morning for everybody else, but I've been up since like 5 p.m. yesterday, so I'm sorry.
And also, in Eric's defense, winter is coming.
It is.
That is true.
It is.
Unless you're in Australia.
Well, you saw in the brief flashback in season 1 where Din's being rescued. It's Death Watch members that are rescuing him. They've got that distinctive emblem on their shoulder pauldron that you see. It's a shriek hawk diving is what the symbol actually is. Almost looks like a stylized W, if you will. But that's the symbol that Pre Vizsla, the leader of Death Watch, wore just right on the center of his helmet. So it's clear. And I love this aspect of the episode because their reaction where they're all like, oh, you're one of those.
Yeah.
That was great.
This crazy, like, fanatical sect. And like, if you've that's why it's really enriching to go back and watch the Clone Wars or know and have seen Bo-Katan's history. Like she goes way back with these guys and knows just how crazy they are and was in league with them. And so for her to be like, oh God.
Yeah.
Like she knows.
She refers to them as religious zealots.
Din has no clue.
And it's funny.
Din's like, wait.
It's funny too that she has to explain to him what he is.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because he truly has no idea. It's like he lives this life kind of, and it's funny because for as much as he, gets around and visits places and interacts with people, he's still very much kind of like in his own bubble and very, very ignorant of Mandalorians in the broadest sense. It's like the only Mandos he knows are the ones in that particular sect.
Right.
And that's it. So yeah, it's really interesting how like insular he is. And of course this has us thinking too, now that he's being exposed to Mandalorians who have different beliefs, is this, and now here's where we're crossing the made up world with the real world. Is this going to lead to Pedro Pascal being able to show his face if he then decides, hey, you know what? Screw this. I'm going to actually take my helmet off because these guys say it's okay, and why not?
I think,
and maybe I can like eat lunch.
Right. I think maybe at some point, but I don't think necessarily anytime soon. Carrie was pointing this out in Discord. She does martial arts, and she was talking about, when we go visit another dojo, that maybe they're not as strict about. I'm paraphrasing, but not as strict about procedures or different ways that they pay respect to different things or something like that. I'm still going to do it because that's the way I've been brought up through this. And that's how we do it. And as long as it's not in conflict with, another dojo or something, like we're going to keep doing it the way we do it. Cause that's us. So I think that he's probably going to stick with what he feels comfortable with until the point where he maybe starts to feel comfortable not doing that. And I don't think that's just like him saying, holy crap, finally I can take this thing off. I think that for him, it's such a part of his identity that he doesn't take it off. He has to change his identity before he would be comfortable taking that action. And that could happen, but I don't think it's going to be right away.
I would love to see it as part of a long play that's a deeper look into the Mandalorian society, because what's fascinating about this, other than it being hilarious that he has no idea that he's the kooky one, is that what's clear is that the Death Watch and the Children of the Watch are still splintered off from the rest of whoever's left in the Mandalorian society. This isn't the first time that Mandalore has been broken apart and they've had to go to ground because of like some bad guy that's put the hammer down on the planet. But again and again, you've seen the bulk of Mandalorians, no matter what their tribe, come together, the exception being Death Watch. And so what's clear is that these coverts are likely splinter cells of Death Watch. And it makes me wonder, a character like the Armorer, who I am convinced we will see again. She's got history, and she's got to be somebody within that orbit, that Death Watch orbit. It makes me wonder whether she's somebody like Rook Kast, who we saw. She was the short-haired female Mandalorian that fought against Ahsoka and Bo-Katan alongside Darth Maul.
Oh yeah.
At the very end of in this most recent arc of the Clone Wars, during the very end there, because I don't think folks have speculated, maybe she's
that's brilliant,
Sabine Wren's mom or something like that, and that's possible, but it's fascinating to me to see that, and I want to see it explored more, why the Death Watch is still out on their own, and is that going to be the thing that eventually gets him to sort of switch his ways if it gets to the point where Bo-Katan and the rest of the Mandalorians are moving forward and they want to do something positive and retake Mandalore, and the Death Watch is still out on their own. He realizes that conflict and he's on the wrong side of it.
Well, you also have to look at the fact that he mentions that Mandalore is cursed. And so
and they all say they don't believe everything you hear. So there's some disinformation stuff
right.
going
So
on.
maybe a lot of the Watch haven't been back to Mandalore, and that's another reason. Why, and maybe that's even intentional to segregate them from those other opinions so that they're not being led astray. Yes, Lou. Very good of you to be raising your hand.
I was being
and
patient. I was showing
that's
restraint.
very good.
So.
That's impressive. This is the way.
Exactly. One thing about the Mandalorian's introduction in this episode was we had a different music cue than we've ever seen in Star Wars.
Yeah.
And I thought this was fantastic. We had that kind of industrial kind of, high-paced, music going on, which was used twice. It was used when they first were on the ship, when, rescuing him and the child, and they used it once when they were attacking the transport. And I thought that was a nice departure. It was definitely different than Star Wars.
I really liked that music.
Yeah.
I thought that was great. I like the fact that, like, when they took their helmets off, he was so taken back by it that, like, his assumption was that they weren't Mandos and they stole the armor.
Right.
He's like, where'd you get that armor from? You're not Mandos. You can't possibly be. And it was a great exchange. And yeah, I'm looking forward to him learning more about what it means to be a Mandalorian and what Mandalorians are in the biggest sense, whether or not it changes him. And I think it will to some extent, but I think that knowledge, that opening up of him, which may very well not take place until, late in season 3, maybe a season 4, if that happens. I again think this is a long game thing, and I'm totally okay with that. I want to see this long-term character progression.
And it's interesting too, because we see some differences between Din Djarin and Bo-Katan when they're on the, a Gazanti class cruiser, that Imperial ship. And he's like, this isn't what I signed up for. I didn't sign on for this. And
Look at
yeah,
that. Tom
of course I have whatever it is we're
Tom's
talking about.
got a miniature of it, of course.
You were the kid in grade school that had show and tell for freaking everything, didn't you?
Ladies and gentlemen, this is why if you're listening to
It
the
was
audio
Star Wars.
podcast, you need to be watching the video.
Hey guys, I heard we were talking about the clone version of Luke. I actually have that here, and it's Luke with 2 U's.
Not everything about the Thrawn trilogy was wonderful. Anyway, so but there's this kind of an ethical conflict between Din Djarin and Bo-Katan. And she kind of takes this approach of, no, we do what we need to do to complete the mission. And he's like, no, we had a deal. You stick to your word. And so there's these two different conflicting moralities almost. And they kind of settle it, but there's still some tension there. And it's interesting. And I think that this is probably, as you said, Tim, kind of a long game where Filoni and Favreau are going to take us to this larger scale, almost a civil war within Mandalorian culture. If maybe not a civil war per se, but at least this rift between the two different ideologies. I think that down the road, that might be a direction they go in. Yeah. So we've got this battle on the ship, which I loved. I loved I think we have them trapped.
Yeah,
that actor, I recognized him. He's older, obviously now, but he played this recurring role, a bit role in Parks and Rec, where he was one of the citizens that would sit in these public meetings and just make these asinine comments,
really,
about whatever it is that was being proposed.
That's funny. I didn't catch that.
Yeah, I didn't catch it initially. Somebody else I saw pointed it out, and it's absolutely him.
That's awesome. I loved the comedy of that battle. Like, it didn't feel like comedy. It didn't feel slapsticky. It felt like an intense battle, but it was also funny in moments.
Well, it was great when they first got in the ship because, there was some troopers on the outside of the ship that I'm hoping they were getting ready to go inside because they're getting ready to leave the atmosphere. Right. But, they take care of those guys pretty quick. And now they know there's people are trying to board the ship. And they're like, how many of them are there? There's like 10 or more.
Right.
Yeah. And then the guy in the left seat's going, there's only 4 life forms.
Yeah.
And then they hear the word Mandalorian, and the look on their face is like, oh no. Yeah. We're in for it.
Well, and
this is now the second time that Mando has been like tricked about the number of stormtroopers that he's going in to face. Like once again, he's told that, hey, it's like a squad of troopers at best, and they can't hit anything. And then it's like an entire platoon.
Okay, so that's a question for you, Tom, because we were talking about this when we were doing our watch together thing. How many troops are in a squad?
I don't know if it's been established canonically, but typically it's 10 to 12. Okay. So, for a group of 4 Mandalorians, battle-hardened ones at that, not a problem is what we were.
And this was like 3 squads.
Yeah.
So easily that was on this ship.
Yeah, because I told Tim, I said when we were watching, I said, well, just message Tom, but word your message to Tom as a Google search.
Which I did. But Google was very slow yesterday.
Really?
Everybody's Googling Bo-Katan.
Right.
Google must have been otherwise occupied. So, it took Tom like half an hour to get back to me.
And then Lou.
But yeah, no, that was great. That like you locked him in the cargo control area. Whoosh. The door opens and they get sucked out. That was fantastic.
I wish I could have seen the look on Lou's face as they all got spaced.
It wasn't really.
It was atmosphered. Is that a verb?
Right up my alley.
They got atmosphered.
Right up my alley.
Yeah, close enough.
It was great.
Yeah. So then there's the discussion at the end with Din and Bo-Katan. It's funny. I wanted to point this out to you. We're talking about the subtitles, Tom. And I'm watching the subtitles, and in the scenes where they're in the hallway and they're about to rush the, it was either the cargo control center or the cockpit. I forget which point it was during the battle, but they've all got their helmets on, so the subtitles have to differentiate who's speaking. And it would have Bo-Katan, and it would have the other. They'd have Axe, what's his face, and stuff like that. And then when Din Djarin speaks, it's the Mandalorian. I'm like, there are 4 Mandalorians there. You can't do that anymore. He has a name. Just call him Din Djarin. Like it.
He's still the Mandalorian.
And so it's Bo-Katan. She's just the other Mandalorian. And
that's right.
Then there are 2 other
She's not the Mandalorian.
No, you can't.
Yeah. I know. But before we have the discussion about the end of the episode, though, we had that discussion between the unnamed commander of the ship and.
And Gideon. Yeah, I was going to point out that Gideon points out that there have been other, quote, pirate attacks. Presumably this is not the first time they've had ships taken by Bo-Katan.
Well, I'm wondering, we wondered if this was, do they know they're Mandalorians, or are they just saying, oh yeah, we're getting tapped by pirates again, So I think
pirates in the subtitles was in quotation marks.
It was, yeah. And it was really interesting. Now, I mean, that said, of course, you can kind of imagine that, like, on this planet, of course, because it's this water planet, seafaring society, that, like, pirates are probably a thing. So, like, they've dealt with Captain Jack and all that. Oh, wrong franchise. Sorry. But so, I mean, it probably hasn't always been Mandalorians, but yeah, maybe the Mandalorians certainly are harassing this, Imperial remnant that's there and whatever it is that they've been dealing with, but there probably are also some legitimate pirates.
Based on what Bo-Katan had said earlier, this is part of an ongoing thing, an ongoing crusade that they've had, reallocating the weapons, hunting down the Darksaber, etc. So I'm sure that Gideon specifically has been targeted. And that when he was referring to the, quote, pirates, I got the impression that they knew exactly what he was talking about, and it was Mandalorians. If not the 3 of them, then at least part of her group.
Oh, sure. But I wouldn't have been surprised to see Hondo Ohnaka show up.
I would have been. Hey. No, they'll save that for like later. That'll be his own thing. They're not going to like piggyback him on something that's bigger than him. They will make like a thing of Hondo. Hondo will have at least his own episode, if not his own 2 or 3 story arc. Yeah.
Initially I was, and I know this isn't the Hondo show. Initially, I was so annoyed by the character, but then I really came to love him.
He's awesome.
Yeah.
I was the same way.
Yeah, me too.
I couldn't stand him at first.
Very similar to Jar Jar. Like initially you're annoyed by Jar Jar.
Except I still want Jar Jar to die.
No,
awesome.
Still annoyed by Jar Jar.
Yeah. Moving along.
It was really neat seeing the Empire once again. I mean, you saw them, the Remnant, in a different sort of stronger capacity at the end of season 1, but you get a little more of a peek into what they're doing right now. Not only do they still have ships, I mean, a Gazanti cruiser is not a Star Destroyer, but it's clear that they still have, space-worthy craft that can do some damage. But they're also operating sort of in the dark, right? They say that Trask is a Blackwater or a black market.
Yeah.
And it's clear that the Remnant is operating on the fringes, trying to stay out of the New Republic's gaze, because these are all, as we know from some of the outside materials, they're war criminals, the Imperials that stayed in the fight, so to speak, and didn't retreat to this little sector of the core worlds that they were sectioned off to, were considered war criminals. And so they're out here on the fringes, and they're operating, quite frankly, like the Rebel Alliance, like a cell. And you see that interaction with Moff Gideon. And I just love this part. He's like, you know what you have to do. You're not going to get help. Your ship is lost. Do what you have to do. And it's not, hey, fight it out to the bitter end. That's what we do as the Empire. It's this like almost Nazi-esque, like, fanatical mentality of long live the Empire. And he, goes to drive the ship into the ocean.
Right.
Because now the Empire is operating like a terrorist cell effectively. And you gotta cut this cell off so that you save the rest of the network. That's just an awesome, like really fascinating turn of events to see play out.
Yeah. Really solid writing there. In that whole concept.
I think the episode overall was very dense in the writing,
there was a lot,
what was revealed, in moving things along, both within the episode and within the season so far. And then we get to the very end, which is kind of the big talking point. Though I know we're running a little long in this episode here, but the mention of Ahsoka. Like, I guess I was kind of expecting this, the doors open and the smoke billows out and there's this shadowy figure covered in robes. And then, that would be the first exposure we would get to Ahsoka. And instead, Bo-Katan totally just name drops her. Just, oh yeah, go to this planet and this city on this planet and ask for Ahsoka Tano. I'm like, wow, that was so direct.
And tell her
and tell her, hey, Bo-Katan says hi. You owe me $20, Yeah, so
and hey, we still got to get together for that.
So it was nice that they did it that way, I think, because it wasn't just this tropey stereotype of this robed figure pulling back the hood and it's this character we've been waiting years to see in live action. This felt more genuine. It also felt like it built the story better because now he has a specific goal of a specific person that he's going to go talk to. And I think now we can move faster toward that instead of him just kind of tripping across her somehow. Like, this is something that's much more intentional as far as this leg of the quest.
Yeah, and I think that's something that they needed to do because he was just kind of stumbling along and meandering. And then they did need to get to a point story-wise that, okay, he can't just meander perpetually. Like, he needs finally to be directed toward a certain thing. And okay, now we're going to
and it's something that Lila and I talked about on a recent episode of the Story Crucible is characters. What draws people to characters. That's actually part of a larger conversation we had offline. But in order to connect with characters, you have, they have to be relatable. They have to kind of be the avatar for the audience through the story, and they learn things as the audience members do. But also, people latch onto characters who exhibit some sort of a skill, whether it's a skill dealing with other characters psychologically, whether it's a certain competency with a task or a weapon system or whatever it is. And with The Mandalorian, if he's just fumbling his way through the season, that's not as interesting. Like, yeah, he kind of didn't know where to go at first, but this is what makes a bounty hunter, right? The ability to actually hunt and to find. So there's an investigative nature implied there. And
I mean, let's just be honest about Din. While he has some skills, he is a little bit of an idiot. I mean, can anyone argue that?
I don't think
he doesn't even know that he's
I don't think idiot is I can argue that. I don't think idiot is the correct way to put it. I think that he's realistic. And I think that that's something we don't often see in stories based around a single protagonist. Is, you know, he's flawed, and that's okay. We talked before about the fact that he's not some overpowered superhero. And we don't want that. We don't want him to be, because then he's not as relatable. And it makes the entire storyline superficial, which is something we've always had in Star Wars. I mean, A New Hope, it had a lot of mythology and a lot of depth in that regard. But it also wasn't entirely relatable in the sense that, like, the good guys were super good and the bad guys were super bad, and everything just magically worked out for the good guys. And, like, it's not realistic.
Yeah, that's a good point, Eric. I think and it's realistic too. I think how I would phrase it for Mando is his experience and his view of the galaxy is a little narrower than we realized. And it's thrown into sharp relief with a character like Bo-Katan, where if you know her backstory and you've seen her on screen before, you know how much she's experienced and how much more of the galaxy she's seen. Yeah. And a character like her is not going to, like, pull him up and sit him down aboard that ship and say, let me fill you in on the last, like, 40 years of galactic history. You've missed a little bit. Yeah. She's on a mission. It's awesome to see her juxtaposed with him, where she knows so much more, but she's got a mission to take care of. She's going to point out, like, oh, I see why you're acting the way that you are. But now we know, I think with inclusion of a character like that, or even Ahsoka, you're going to see growth in his viewpoint of the galaxy, this expansion that I think makes him a more attractive character.
And I think that's really the area in which he needs to learn, right? Bo-Katan is a stateswoman. Like, she's a politician, she's a diplomat, she's literally a world leader, but then also a combatant and a soldier. And Din Djarin has a very specialized set of skills, and he's very, very, very good at those. But then there are other things that he's not as skilled, or more importantly, as experienced with, like you said, Tom. And I think that that's one of those things that gives us an opportunity to watch the character grow. And I don't know. I'm looking forward to that. Now, here's the catch, though. I don't think the fans are going to go for waiting 2 or 3 episodes to meet Ahsoka after that. If you're going to name drop her at the end of this episode, like, we better, at the end of the following episode, we better at least be arriving on her doorstep.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of my prediction. We're going to get her at the end of the next episode, and then the following episode, that will be her episode.
It'll be the journey to her.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's Filoni's episode. It's 5.
Yeah, the journey to her in 4, and then dealing with her in 5. You can't put this off until like 7 or 8. That's just, you dropped the name.
Not at all. Yeah.
And not with this fandom. That's not going to cut it.
Going to the discussion about basically Din's personality and his skill sets, he really needs to learn how to negotiate, because practically every episode has been, he shows up someplace, he says, hey, I was told you know something. Can you tell me? Well, sure, I'll tell you, but you have to do this really dangerous thing for me. Okay.
I mean, he's really good at doing dangerous things.
Yeah. Now, granted, I understand that, writing wise and story wise, yes, we need to have adventure and all that stuff. And so that's kind of what gets him there. But it's just funny that that's pretty much the story beat of every episode, where he agrees to take on some dangerous thing in exchange for armor or information or something like that. It's pretty humorous, and I'm not opposed to it. It's just kind of funny.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode, I think. This was a pretty jam-packed episode, and I think there's speculation as far as where things are going to go from here. But honestly, I think that, we kind of know now, right? This episode tells us we are going to go find Ahsoka.
Yeah.
I think we can expect a journey to Ahsoka in episode 4, and then actually interacting with Ahsoka in episode 5 and kind of going from there and probably setting up episode 6, 7, and 8.
Well, as long as all the twine hold.
Yeah, at some point he does need to take it to a crotch.
I love that line. He's like, Mon Calamari.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And he's losing.
Yeah, that last shot.
Yeah, he jumps at the end and something jumps
in
his face. Right.
Yeah.
The only thing I would note, Bo-Katan says that he's to go to the city of Caladan on the forest planet of Corvus. We've not seen Corvus before. There was a ship in Battlefront 2, actually, Iden Versio, since we mentioned her. Her Imperial ship was named the Corvus.
I looked it up in Wikipedia as well. Yeah, and I think there were a couple of Legends references to a Corvus that was not a planet as well. But so we have no information about this planet at all. The only thing in Wikipedia was exactly what was extracted from this episode. So, so another new location. I kind of like that. I like getting to see the new locations, and I think that traveling to a known place every now and then is kind of nice, but I'd rather see places we haven't seen before. So this will be interesting going forward. And now we kind of have, I think, some fair expectations as audience members of what to expect. And even if it's not episodes 4 and 5, and it's 4, 5, and 6, and then we get 7 and 8 being the big finale, I think this is going to be very interesting. I think the only real question is Sabine still hanging out with Ahsoka post Rebels or not? So the question is really, are we going to see Sabine this season, if at all? She is a Mandalorian, it would seem to fit. She's had interactions with Bo-Katan, it would seem to fit, but it might not happen. But we at least know that we're getting Ahsoka, and that's where we're heading. So, all right. So that's going to do it, I think, for this episode of The Outer Rim. Wow. This was a really, really good episode of The Mandalorian. Yeah. All right.
It was.
So let us know what you think of this episode. Did you like it? Do you think the Razor Crest needs to be replaced? Did things happen the way you were expecting? Is this what you wanted to see out of Bo-Katan and the other Mandalorians? Let us know. The best way you can do that, go to randomchatter.com/Discord. And there'll be a link here in the show notes in the description on YouTube. And we've got channels set up for each one of the shows on the Random Chatter Network. And we even have, for those people who donate to help support the network through Patreon, even just $1 a month, we have a whole separate section that we've set up as a thank you for our members. And that includes both a Mandalorian channel to discuss general Mandalorian stuff and a spoilers channel for people after you've watched the episode. You can immediately go into that channel, talk about anything you want from that episode, and not have to worry about spoiling it for other people, because other people won't drop into that episode until they've watched for that week. And it's a great place to go and not have to worry about spoiling it for other people, but immediately get to talk about what you just saw. So it's a lot of fun. And as you can imagine, that's a very active channel. So once again, randomchatter.com/Discord. You can go to randomchatter.com/Patreon to find out how to support the network. We are a nonprofit organization. So actually, you become a member of the network by donating $1, which is kind of cool. So thank you, everybody who's been doing that. Thank you for everybody who's been hanging out with us in the chat room on a Saturday morning when you could be sleeping in. You chose to spend it with us instead. We really appreciate that. That means a lot to us. So Tom and Tim and Lou, thank you for being here. I don't know about you guys, but I'm going to bed.
It was a lot of fun this morning.
So take care, everybody. Tune in again next week for more coverage of The Mandalorian. Don't forget to watch Echo Base. We're going to be streaming that starting at 8 p.m. Eastern. That's GMT -5 on Sunday night. And I know it's been a couple of slow news weeks, but I think we've got a couple of things we can talk about this week. don't want to spoil it, let the cat out of the bag, but we've got some topics. And then we do Random Chatter. And then finally, Movie Chatter is going to be, I think, Thursday night this week at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So check that out as well. So until then, everybody, take care. Have a great weekend. We'll be back at you soon.